To make things clear, here's a legal clarification. It is legal for the victim to record the rape or abuse as evidence herself against her abuser and report it to the police, so it can be admissible in court. But others outside her family obtaining the evidence illegally by either downloading it to their computers / hard drive or have it on their phone to report it to the police for her is still inadmissible in court, which is why it is risky to do it yourself. But don't let others suggest it or report it to the police for you. Luckily, Mint did not do this herself, or themselves if you want to be gender neutral, nor did Lio or Vita download evidence of something that wasn't recorded. Here are a few more clarifications before I begin to drop this massive truth bomb. Number 1, the only reason why I am calling Mint a her in this video until a certain point is because all of this happened in the past, and therefore making it past tense, long before Mint's transition. So miss me on all that misgendering shit. Number 2, Mint Hart is still a victim of sexual assault before the GoFundMe page was even launched on September 26th, 2018. And finally, number 3, this will make it into part 2 of the massive Predator Hunter Civil War drama compilation series. Hi everyone, I am Brian Mullins the Fox for a drama archive commentary. Well, I never thought I would have to make another video about Lio Convoy mentioning him, but this is far more important than you think. Grimskull has done God's work, and so have I, Neora, and others for spreading awareness of all this shit. And even I see that you can't argue with people who've already made up their minds about you, all because of my edgy past. Instead of looking at me as the person I am now. Note that this isn't necessarily a response video to Thomas himself. He already apparently washed his hands and other people's hands of me anyway. But I have a more important theory as to what led up to the GoFundMe page, or really, rather, what options they thought were available after its launch. This is the truth about the Mint Hart situation. All of it unfiltered. So apparently, the GoFundMe page wasn't the only option for Mint. But at the end of the day, I wonder if Mint consented to Lio's shitty suggestion / idea or not. That's what matters the most in this story. It was among 3 options, one of which is just downright criminal. So let me sum all of them up here. To be clear, the other 2 were suggestions by both Lio and Vita a day after the GoFundMe page was created on September 27th, 2018. Here are all of them anyway. Number 1, do nothing. Don't even press charges against her abuser and move on long after being sexually assaulted, having known that their abuser has been in her life for 12 years. Or, number 2, by the way, this second choice was an either or in and of its own right. Lio told Mint at the time to either have them abscond her away from their abusive mother's home, the same one where their abuser lived, or set up and record Mint potentially being raped, or at least sexually abused, so they can supposedly have evidence to report to the police for her. I'm sure it's not necessarily to use it as evidence against her abuser, because it's likely for a more darker, degenerate purpose. Worse than I can ever say, to be frank. The potential distribution of CP, regardless if it was intended or not. Lio told her to record her potentially being raped, either on her phone or on another device like a computer that has a built-in camera, or both. Both of them even suggested the perfect angle for a dastardly and outright criminal attempt to abscond a then-to-be minor, or the other option if the first one fails. After all, Lio did, in fact, tell Mint to do so, which is not only entrapment, but even worse, endangering a minor potentially for sexual gratification, instead of what they thought would be the end result. Strangely enough, having Mint record her rape, herself and reporting it to the police, if this were to have occurred at all, is still risky but legal. Surprise, surprise, even in her own state at the time. And I don't want to hear the whole excuse of, he told her that because they wanted to use it as evidence against her abuser bullshit. Endangering a then-to-be minor is no excuse to trivialize the trauma of sexual assault victims like Mint. Unlike you, Lio, I never told anyone to record either their own sexual assault or even worse, their own rape on camera, and then have to report it to the police for her myself. The idea of Lio telling that to her in the past for the purpose of possible CP distribution, let alone obtaining it illegally, instead of having her do the work herself so she can try and get justice against her abuser, makes me want to throw up. Now let's define statutory rape, since they brought it up in the original call/recording, and also because it's not just concerning sexual assault at this point. Statutory rape, to sum it up bluntly after having watched this video, as it is stated clearly on the board, as when a male defendant 18 years old or older has sexual intercourse with a female victim under the age of 18 years old. Consent does not matter. It not being forced upon her or being forced upon her does not matter either. Just because it's not between an arbitrary age range for the victim does not mean that what would have ever happened to that then-to-be minor is anywhere near justifiable or logical even. So in ensuring that Mint didn't show that she didn't consent to this potential rape, Lio told her to record it if their abuser dared to try and rape her in case if the first option of them absconding her from her abusive home failed. Because the justice system is completely fucked up. Him and Vita would have likely gotten away with it, having told her to do so anyway. Because had Mint shown any sentiment demonstrating that she did not condone or they did not condone or consented to the idea of this even going down, it would have been a lot worse. If Lio and Vita went through with this, the evidence of Lio planning it would be inadmissible to the courts anyway, knowing that her abuser would have just easily washed his hands of them and gotten away with it scot-free. Not only that, it would have escalated to a full-blown rape, and had her abuser done it again to humor Lio and Vita in the most disgustingly predatory way imaginable, the abuse would not only continue, the trauma would be unbearable to recover from, it could lead to the victim herself, or himself if it's a male, committing suicide. Because the pain and sexual abuse and torment is just too much. That and the idea of having their family abandon them and render them homeless too. And that is the most fucked up part about all of this. And the thing that just made me almost explode with unbridled rage at the time of even fucking taking this into consideration is that Lio thought this was a good idea. Almost like I gave the exact examples that you wanted me to give you of endangering a minor or putting other minors in harm's way, Lio. That's all I did. Let's be clear. If you were trying to bust a predator or expose an obvious sexual abuser, you don't become a weapon for which the abuser can use against Mint. Never give your enemy any ammo, even if it means you being your enemy's ammo at all. Or, number 3, set up a GoFundMe page, later facilitating the online grooming of Mint Hearts, never reporting Vita for his predation for years, even when Vita got arrested himself, him staying in Lio's circle until 2020, and basically filing no reports against Vita for his predation all this time, but only called the cops on him for a wellness check. That is an even more gruesome, more crushing irony than I have ever pointed out in the past. And I would be further remiss had I not have the opportunity to make a video like this. The way the GoFundMe page was even set up is suspicious. Mint had to dox herself because she couldn't do all of this GoFundMe stuff by herself legally. Vita was the adult and beneficiary in this situation. Vita was given Mint's now to be dead name, Emily Tellez. including her middle name, her mother's home address, her email address, and Vita, for some time before giving it to Lio Convoy, was the one who was legally pulling the strings of this fundraiser. This despite the fact that minors can start up their own fundraiser, but would have to rely on an adult because she herself at that time didn't and can't have their own bank account until they're 18 years old. Their abusive mother couldn't possibly let that slide with her own bank account. I don't think Mint used her mother's bank account, did she? Because if so, I would agree with the abusive mother only on that point. If she ever did, she didn't. So at this point, Vita had to carry the burden initially. Then it became Lio's burden 6 days later. And now I will have to weigh in on what happened during and after the GoFundMe page's somewhat successful run. This one video or live stream from one of Anthony's other channels called Fan and Frenzy, on September 27th, 2018, he posted the notorious call where Lio and Vita suggested that Mint should record her rape. On September 28th, 2018, Vita then confirmed that Vita is running the GoFundMe page, after Mint apparently handed it to him. 6 days later, Vita gave it over to Lio not because he was too much of a pussy to handle the money as Lio would have you believe himself. It was because Vita couldn't financially support the fundraiser, nor could Mint even when she was a minor. Knowing that Lio was well beyond able to assist him with helping and accommodating Mint's financial needs. Just a week later, Lio updated people on the success of the GoFundMe page. How and why did Mint move to Nebraska for? I will tell you. With the funds of the GoFundMe page that was given to her by Lio himself, when all of that went to shit later on. All of this moving out of Oregon was because Mint was somehow able to prove herself to be mature enough and with enough help from others who supported the GoFundMe page. All the while, her piece of shit abusive mother couldn't prove to the court that Mint was still an immature child who's still needing mommy's influence and guidance, nor could she prove that she's safe with an actual sexual abuser right by her mother's side. Just like any other state in America, Nebraska was generous to an extent when it came to minor emancipation. According to Nebraska law, upon emancipation, a minor may be able to establish their own residence, incur debt or contractual obligations, consent to medical decisions, enlist in the military, marry without consent, be eligible for public assistance, the litigation and settlement of controversies, enroll in school or college, or acquiring property. And just a finishing touch to the timeline of the GoFundMe page, on January 23rd, 2019, Lyle, then under Vita's name, gave people the final update. How and why did it all go to shit? Because Mint, just like any irresponsible teenager in their teenage years, had the tendency to spend too much and just had a habit of impulse buying shit that she only wants and not enough of what she needs. And even if she bought whatever she needed to keep herself in a place to live, not being financially responsible enough and somehow having trust in Lyle anyway became the main two reasons why she needed to move in with Lyle. But the problem is, right around when she turned 18 or were 18, doesn't matter which, in 2019, she wanted to move in with Lyle. You know, the same guy who once told Mint to record her rape. Sometime in 2019, Mint moved in with Lyle, putting herself in harm's way because back then, Vita was still in Lyle's circle, and Vita felt betrayed that Lyle did this so he can have the last laugh. Vita being a convicted mom beater, computer thief, and an online sexual predator, this whole time made it all the more hilarious for the ever-growing crowd of Lyle Convoy supporters and snowflakes to support him even more. For 2 whole years, Lyle has let a predator into a then-to-be minor's life, not only endangering her at that time, but even going as far as Lyle suggesting that she should record her rape in the context where it would have been illegal to. But Lyle's association with Vita doesn't go anywhere near as long as Vita's and Mint's terminally online relationship. Mint started her YouTube channel and DeviantArt under the name Mint 25, or Jordan Doodles on YouTube when it was Mintheart back in 2015. And I hate to break it to you all, Jordan or Mintheart was friends with a predator, just like Lio, and also allowed him to be in her online life for roughly 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, long before Lio did. Vita was then outed from Lio's circle in May of 2020, after 4 days of Lio and the gang finding out that Vita has been a child predator this whole time, just as long as what Rosa Ray Ramsey's bad excuse would have had you all believe, had it not been proven to be false, or it actually having been 8 months as opposed to 4 days. But again, 2 years for Lio and Mintheart for 4 years is way longer and way worse than just 8 months. This just further proves that Lio Convoy is worse than both Rosa Ray Ramsey and Rebecca Starlight when it comes to handling a predator in their midst, let alone their circle combined. Even then, Mint's friendship with Vita is actually worse than Lio's involvement with working with him and facilitating the grooming of Mintheart himself. Because, to simply put, Lio wasn't even into predator hunting in 2016. He only got into it because of Toon Critic in early 2018. At the end of the day, what happened in the past, and it should stay that way. And no one, not even Lio himself, can wiggle his way out of this one. That is not only proof of Lio facilitating the grooming whilst Vita is an active predator himself, he also told Mint to record her being raped or potentially raped or sexually abused in the context where it's illegal, not in the context where it's legal if she did it herself. Which is extremely fucked up. Words almost fail to describe that magnitude of how fucked up all of this really is. Anyone who is unironically a supporter or fan of Lio Convoy, unsubscribe. Please, God, don't even come back. And don't you dare think that you are smarter than you actually are, just because you pulled the classic whataboutism card. And I have clearly asked Mint about this in a comment where it reads, Jordan, did you ever consent to or ever noticed that he suggested to you to record your potential rape? I don't know how they're gonna respond. There's no point in being gender neutral anymore, but I'm doing so anyways, so fuck it. So how and what she, at the time, would have responded with will be covered in the Part 3 response to Lio Convoy. If she says nothing, I won't be surprised. And if Mint/Jordan does try to cover up for her own or their own mistakes in this situation, or for the fact that she was also part of the problem for not only having Vita as a friend before Lio came along, but then became one of Vita's victims, and then Lio facilitating his grooming, further proves that nobody can ever be innocent in this situation or a situation like this. Not even the victim herself or themselves. She would be the perfect candidate for the wall, just as much if not more than both the predator and the predator facilitator, or predator hunter in quotations, themselves combined, if she decides to side with Lio anyway, no matter what. I am not tolerating any of that whataboutism bullshit. I am sick and tired of having all of Lio's little cocksuckers drooling in the comments, failing to think of anything argumentatively productive to say, nor will I tolerate any of the nonsense I see Spurgs and Spastics spurg out about in the Senate Discord, or better yet, community Discord as well. Helping someone to leave their abusive parents' house should not be used as a shield against the fact that Lio did indeed told Mint to record her rape. Not only that, but he also facilitated the grooming of Mint by Vita. Nor should it be used as an excuse to exploit the very victim of sexual assault that you were there to help. Supposedly. Mint may be a degenerate themselves, but it's no excuse to trivialize the trauma just to get some sick own on her abuser, potentially recording CP. And that's why it bothers you, LioMan, because people like me are starting to question your lack of ethics in this one. And you had the nerve to call me a projectionist and a predator defender of all things. And for anyone else even suggesting or arguing otherwise, it's just going to make you look like you're coping even harder to your copium tank's content. This is why you don't just fucking sully yourself and being a predator's right-hand man. In conclusion, That is the terrifying and sad truth about the Mint Heart situation. This video will make it into my part 3 response video to Lio Convoy, not separating minor and major response videos anymore, because there's just no point in doing so. Now, I will sum it all up for you before I say my final words and close the video off. I will sum it all up for you. Number 1, the GoFundMe page was never the first and final solution. Lio and Vita had other sick and twisted ideas in mind, but unfortunately, it did come to a legal and financial cost. 2. The GoFundMe page, although it is somehow successful, says nothing about how all this shit impacted Mint to the point where this could have potentially been one of the reasons why she transitioned. Nor will it, because her transitioning had almost nothing to do with it. Number 3, Lio and Vita are the reasons why Mint should have never trusted them, but she had no choice anyway. 4. It is never a good idea for anyone to tell you to record your rape in the context that it is in, even if it's for some sick own on a sexual abuser or predator, and have them report it to the police for you. It's only legal if you do that yourself, without the consent of your abuser in question. Although it is risky, and calling 911 and reporting it right away is a much better option, that's how I just contextually put all of this into perspective. 5. Her abusive mom is still a piece of shit, but I can now understand to the fullest extent possible as to why Mint had no choice but to leave that abusive home. And finally, number 6. This is why you never hand a minor to a predator. It will all come back to bite you in the ass. And in this context, it was Lio's ass. And partially Mint's because she had him in her life, or their life, given that they're trans now to begin with. I have about done what I needed to get done, so before I end this video, I want to thank you all for watching, and one quick message to Anthony or for no good reason. If you can't take the fact that Lio told Mint to record her rape and have them report it to the police themselves for her without being a petty fuck yourself, it takes 2 to tango, but it only takes 1 to put all the pieces to the puzzle together. I am Brian Mullins the Fox, signing out. Goodbye.